All right, welcome back, everybody, on another episode where we'll be talking immigration. But we are out of the New York City office location today. We have some special guests. We have our big time attorney, Mr. Tim CHALUMEAU, aka the Haitian sensation. That he runs the New York location. And then we have a special guest,
ALIMA DOUMBOUYA.
Miss DOUMBOUYA. So, Miss DOUMBOUYA, she is local New York from which borough? Bronx?
Bronx.
Okay. See a lot of that. Oh, okay.
BX.
And where's your family from?
My dad is from Guinea, Conakry, and my mom is from Ivory Coast.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about your parents' journey in terms of being like an immigrant in New York and what growing up for you was like seeing them navigate this process.
Okay, so I think my dad was here in 93. That was a little before I was born. So when he came, at first it was tough because he was the only one that came, no family. So he had to dorm with other undocumented immigrants and had low-paying jobs as in selling newspapers, working out of supermarkets. But around the 90s, he was only getting paid about 75 cents for those kind of deliveries. So pay was very low, but living costs, thankfully, wasn't that. It was an increase at that time. So he was able to make a living, but not enough for a family.
Okay.
Versus to when he brought my mom over from Ivory Coast in 94.
Yeah.
It was extra tough because my mom came pregnant with my sister.
Mm-hmm.
He was working at Domino's. It wasn't enough. It was also still humiliating with undocumented people.
Wow.
But thankfully, my dad, Domino's, he got promoted to, I think, manager around that time. So he was able to still have a source of income coming in, but it wasn't enough for three. So my mom, however, my mom came, never went to school, doesn't speak English. So she just came. My mom, like from what she told me, when people used to tell her about America, she thought it was a dream. Like she never felt like it was even a real place. So when she married my dad and they told her she would be coming here, she still thought it was a dream. Like she didn't think this place existed at all. Because from where she came from and what she saw.
But hold on a second. So how was your dad able to bring your mom over? Do you know that process? And did your dad come over documented?
No, he came on.
But he was still able to
work off books jobs.
So okay, so he did the under the table jobs.
Yes.
But somehow he was able to bring her over.
Yeah, but I'm not too sure how that process went.
Okay.
Yes.
So she came over and she's like, man, this is America.
Yeah.
As most of us as immigrants or our immigrant parents came over, and we see America as the land of dreams, right?
Mm-hmm. My mom had no clue of what that even was.
Yeah.
Like she didn't know nothing, no English. She don't even know ABCs. Like it was just starting from scratch bottom.
Okay. And then what happened after that?
So when my mom came, luckily she knows how to breathe. So she would go to like other people's shops that was here longer than her that were documented and that had African shops around that time. She would go and like assist with just braiding bottom of the hair up until like when she was able to finally like learn how to braid on her own. And eventually she opened her own shop, 95.
Wow.
Yeah, so my mom had her own African braiding for, I could say like about 20 plus years now.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically what she did, you could say. And
Wow.
I would say growing up in the Bronx with undocumented parents, I can't say it's a feeling because I was born into it. Yeah. So it's like, I'm looking at my parents as regular people. I don't even know what's papers, not papers. They here legally, not legally.
Yeah.
Like they didn't make us feel like that was going on.
Yeah.
And then growing up in South Bronx, it's a lot of other undocumented people. So growing up as kids, we didn't really feel it as much because we were surrounded by other undocumented parents. So it was a normal thing. It didn't feel like an odd thing.
Okay.
So it's just like, okay, you from Africa? Okay, I'm from Africa. Your parents is from here. Okay, cool. We friends. It wasn't like, oh, they're here legally or cops could come and take them. Like, it was none of that. It was just regular. Because we were so, like, sheltered, you could say.
Yeah.
Because coming from immigrant parents, they don't really know, like, I would say, like, African parents, they don't really, like, they know what they know. They don't care to be informed. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's like when my parents is like, they strictly first generation immigrant parents. So it's like, they just know, okay, get up, go to work, put you guys in school, do what you got to do. I do what I do. And that's it.
Okay.
So it's like we didn't really fit it growing up.
Yeah. Okay. So did they ever get over that situation?
Yeah, 07. Both of them luckily got their visas. Their green card.
Nice. And are they citizens yet?
No.
What are they waiting on?
My dad said he doesn't care.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my mom, she's been here for over 20 plus years, but she still doesn't speak the language. She doesn't care to. She just cares to make her money, and that's it. But she talks about it. Like the other day, she told me like she's interested in getting a citizenship, but it's very hard because she doesn't speak the language at all. Still, to this day.
Well, we're putting it on record. Tell your mom and dad that they can come here. It's documented right now, no pun intended, that they can come here and we will do it at no charge.
No problem. I'll let them know.
All right. So, and if you've been following me for a while, one of the things that I preach is if you are eligible for citizenship, go ahead and take it because you have no idea of the things can make you ineligible for citizenship. Like, I mean, just one arrest, you know, even if it's no fault of yours, could set you back 5 years or even put you in removal because you're still a green card holder, a legal permanent resident. So when you're a legal permanent resident, that can be lost at any given time if you find yourself in the wrong circumstance. So, I mean, outside of that, being in New York, when we look at the different type of cases that come out of New York, it's different from the type of cases in Panama City Beach. It's different from the type of cases in Orlando, in Miami, in Florida, because one, it's a different set of immigrants, but the culture is different. Like the New York culture is different from you hear the accent, the way I was just say Bronx. You can tell everything is different. If you could move to any other city, which city would you move to?
I always said Atlanta.
Yeah.
But I think I'm second guessing that. But it was always Atlanta for me.
Yeah.
That's like the Black Hollywood. So.
Okay. And so the way all your parents raised you, right? Did they raise you more with the African culture or New York or kind of like a blend? Or did you just find your own way?
I would say my parents, when it came to them, it was definitely African culture.
Yeah.
That's all they knew.
Yeah. And
I kind of navigated the way myself. Like, I have two older sisters, so that made it easy to, like, introduce me to other things. Yeah. But for the most part, we navigate ourselves.
Okay. That's what's up. And Tim, how long have you been practicing immigration law in New York specifically?
So I've been practicing immigration law in New York since 2019.
Yeah. And what are some of the challenges that you see most New York immigrants face here?
I would say the biggest challenge is that there's a lot of people who are here maybe 10, 15 years without papers.
Yeah.
And they go to many different attorneys or people who are document preparers, and they're always trying to find a solution. But because of the volume of people who are providing immigration services, they kind of have what's called paralysis analysis.
Yeah.
I had a lot of consultations with people who are 20, 30 years here.
Yeah.
They went to this lawyer, but they may have a home, they have families, but they're afraid to kind of take that step because the last lawyer they talked to didn't work out, or they've kind of kept it quiet and hush for so long.
Yeah.
They kind of feel like, hey, I'm just going to continue to live on without having any problems.
Yeah. And so that term again?
What term?
Analysis.
Paralysis analysis.
Paralysis analysis. And I mean, I find that so common. If you've been following me, like even some Jamaicans, they find themselves in a situation where they're like, all right, you know what? I'm good. I'm making money. I'm able to take care of my family. I'm able to have a car. I'm able to send money back to take care of my people. So I'm good. I'm good. So I'm not going to make a decision. Or you have the other type of immigrant or that says, you know what? I don't know or understand this process. So let me just leave it alone. And I'm just going to exist. And the problem with that is all it takes is somebody to call ICE on you. Mm-hmm. Or you get caught up in a raid, or you get pulled over. Especially in Florida right now, if you get pulled over, and with the new law that was passed in July, the law enforcement don't have the right to ask you what your immigration status is. Mm-hmm. And that opens the door for them to either make an arrest based on the stop. And then once that arrest is made, now you're in ICE custody because you don't have legal status.
Right.
So, I mean, definitely for 2024, especially in an election year, I'm like encouraging everybody who has the ability to find legal status, or even just to know if you have any type of option or have some type of game plan or some type of strategy, is to go and seek the right information. Not from your mother's friend or the barber
Or the churchman, the person at church,
or the person at church.
who's doing your taxes.
Exactly. Or Google.
Yes.
Just go and get a consultation from an experienced immigration attorney, because once you get that information, know you're armed with the ability to make a plan, create a vision, and say, all right, these are the things I need to do. Or, you know what, there may not be any solutions for you, but long term, you know, well, possibly this is what I need to do.
Correct.
Or this is what I need to stay away from.
Yeah, and there's even people who I've done consults with that they may have they have a green card, and I would tell them filing for naturalization may not be the best choice. Like, you've had your green card for so long, the type of offense, criminal offense you may have committed or something. If you're gonna file, you're literally gonna awaken the beast. You're gonna put yourself in harm's way. So you kind of say, hey, you got your green card, live peacefully, and be grateful for that. And don't pursue any other benefits.
Yeah, and I mean, just today, Tim and I were talking about a case where a client filed for citizenship, ill-advised, and now, as we've done a deep dive into the case, they are now in removal proceedings. So try to wrap your mind around this, right? You are filing for your citizenship, meaning you had your green card, you've been here, you're living, you're working, you're traveling, you're living your best life. And it's all right, you know what, it's time to get my citizenship. Then you file, then immigration kicks it back, and they're like, oh, we're looking at the way how you obtain your green card or the way how you enter the country, and we've made a determination that this was fraudulent. So now we are going to rescind your green card and put you into removal proceedings for the fact for your life. And I mean, I've done several cases like that, you know. So that's another thing when you're setting up your immigration case, is you have to, keep your records, because if you petition for your green card and the information on the green card does not match up with the information on your citizenship, well, no, that creates misrepresentation or fraud, and that now exposes you to get everything removed. I've even seen a case where a Jamaican guy, he came here on a green card, he came here on a visa, got married, right? Then divorced his wife, then filed for his baby mama in Jamaica, right? But when they went through her file, they did a cross-reference on his file, and they said, oh, hold on, you were doing a lot of trips to Jamaica, and you had a child born in Jamaica during your marriage to the U.S. citizen. Wow. So now we're going to make a determination that the marriage that you were in was fraudulent, because you were still in a relationship with your baby mama in Jamaica that you're now petitioning for. So he got put into removal proceedings and lost his green card and citizenship. So it always pays to do it right the first time, have a plan, have a strategy, and keep all of your documents.
Sure. That's why I believe in the FOIA.
Yeah.
The Freedom of Information Act. I preach that all the time. It gives you clarity. If the lawyer asks for the FOIA, wants to see the FOIA, wants to know your immigration file, is to give the best chance, a strategy, understanding what is going on with your case, because lawyers read and analyze and review. That's our job. And the only way we can do that is if we have your immigration records.
Yeah, that's crazy. Tim, so what do you notice? I mean, is there a difference, or would you say there's a benefit for somebody who is undocumented to come to New York to try to build a life versus in Florida?
For sure. So this is something that I picked up on really quickly. We were doing a lot of, right before the passing of the bill, we were doing a lot of consultation with people who were in bond hearings, or they got pulled over for a little minor thing, no license. Immigration enforcement, the local law enforcement will put them in jail.
In Florida, right?
Yep, they put them in jail. Then they put what's called a detainer on them. When the moment they put a detainer, client's family will call. They're like, hey, what if we pay the bail? What if we pay? What do you get out? I said, well, what's going to happen is once you pay the bail, they'll just put him right into ICE custody. And now he's going to have to fight for his immigration case in ICE custody. And what I realized in New York, for the same type of similar offenses, it's not as aggressive in enforcement as far as reporting, hey, this person doesn't have status, let's put them in proceedings, right? New York, you could, have no license. Generally, some things, of course, if they find out you have a lot of other complicated arrest history, it's a problem. But when it comes to Florida, it seems like a very minor offense. Yeah. They're ready to put you, they're going to communicate with federal law enforcement, make sure ICE gets a hold of you. Whereas in New York, it's a little bit more friendly. You have to understand the nature, the sanctuary city, elements of policies, the kind of culture of New York. It's built off of immigrants, right? So it's a lot more receptive and much more, I would say, forgiving. Right? Yeah. Whereas Florida, it seems to me, is they're ready to remove you if they don't think they have the chance.
So, I mean, when you said a bond hearing, right, and an immigration bond hearing, can you walk us through like what a bond hearing in a New York immigration court is like, and like what would cause somebody to get detained and facing removal? Okay.
So in New York, generally when a person has an arrest that triggers ICE review, they're gonna
is this documented or undocumented or both?
It could be documented or undocumented or both. They can have a green card as well. They generally going to be put in New Jersey.
Okay.
So what happens is there's various facilities. There's Bergen County Jail. There's Elizabeth has a jail. Sometimes I've even had clients who were living in New York and they were placed in Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
So there's a variety of things. So at that moment, once you get a wind of their arrest, the thing that's a little bit difficult with New York and New Jersey versus Florida. Florida, I can tend to find the criminal history really, really quickly. Once I get their first and last name, date of birth, I can see the statute. I can start doing analysis literally on the fly. Yeah. With New York and New Jersey, you got to reach out to the clerks. Yeah. You got to have some kind of authorization. It's just based on state-specific law to kind of see what the records say. Okay. And then from there, I start to develop my strategy. I try to see, okay, is this something, if it's a drug offense, and it was marijuana, was it less than 30 grams of marijuana, right? Because I know there's a way that you get out or bond. Yeah. If I can make the argument, this is the only drug offense. Particularly that. Yeah. I try to see if it's, if it's something that is more maybe a firearm related or if it's domestic violence. I always try to see whether they have some form of relief available at the moment. Are they married to a U.S. citizen? Yeah. Are they married to an LPR? Do they have a child who's a U.S. citizen over the age of 21? I'm always thinking about what's going on. Were they in an estranged, or are they in a marriage and their spouse was estranged from them? Did they experience abuse in that marriage? So that way, when you go into a bond hearing, you're already ready to kind of explain to the judge a bit about their criminal history, why that criminal history doesn't warrant them to keep them detained, mandatory detained. Uh-huh. Then the next thing is try to figure out, okay, this person is a good person. They're a family man or they're a family woman. They're involved in community. They have church from a letter from the church. They have letters from friends explaining how they're a great person, right? And this may be a slip up. And most of the time, too, they may not actually be convicted of the crime yet. Okay. The case is just pending, right? So the case is they're actually not convicted. So let's give them time to kind of get out so they can be released and they can fight the case with their criminal defense attorney. Okay. Rather than being holed up in detention and not having a chance. And then once I'm able to kind of build that up, and then I make the argument, then I always try to make the argument for what relief is available to them now, right? Because many times it's tough. You can have a judge who can be receptive to say, look,
what's a relief?
So a relief would be like if they have a petition, like a marriage-based case available, if they ever were the victim of a crime, and a youth visa may be available for them. Those are potential, or they were in a marriage-based case and they experienced abuse, VAWA, that could be available to them. But you have some judges who have the school of thought that if they're in proceedings, if they're in a bond hearing kind of piece, they want to see if they have actual relief in court. Right? Yeah, I had a case I worked on. It was very, very tough. And I thought the family really qualified for a U visa. The whole family was undocumented. Mm-hmm. The husband was detained. Yeah. And the wife, he had 2 children, they all were. And it was very difficult facts, very sad case. And I thought they qualified for U visa because the child was there were some issues with a family member. It was a very sensitive related crime. And I was faced to judge all those facts on top of course, he could pursue an asylum case, which are usually asylum or cancellation of removal if they've been here for more than 10 years. But even though I explained the U visa, I thought that was really the strong case. The judge was like, hey, I'm not really concerned about that. Has he filed his asylum? Is he pursuing asylum right now?
Yeah.
And I thought that was very eye-opening because I felt like I've been for judges who are a little bit more considerate about the other options that are available. Because as long as they can get out, they can then pursue that form of relief.
Okay.
And I have status here in the U.S.
Okay. Yeah, so you said something a while ago about asylum, and it kind of made me circle back to Alima's parents. I'm wondering if in the 90s, if it was asylum or a refugee status that people from New Guinea or Ivory Coast they were able to get.
Yeah, so based on just my based on my recent review of this Guinea, of just looking at the country conditions, it seems like there's been a lot of political turmoil throughout at least the last 20 to 30 years.
Yeah.
So I can imagine what would make sense possibly. Maybe a family members got asylum and then was able to petition for the spouse.
Yeah.
And then that way the spouse would come in. Once you're here, usually you had to be here more than 1 year. That used to be the policy. If you want asylum, you have to be here more than 1 year to then file for your green card. You have to have physical presence.
But her dad didn't have the green card yet until 97, 07 until 07.
Correct.
So that means
he could have been an asylee for years.
Asylum, yeah.
Could have been an asylee, could have been on asylum, been an asylee for years. Some people don't want to move forward that next step.
Or refugee status. So let's stay on asylum. So I mean, in this office, we've had a huge uptick of asylum and people crossing the water.
Yes.
Right. And I always go into detail about just busting down the myths as to jumping over the wall, and I just have to say this separately. The wall may go back up with this change of administration. So make sure you know what you're doing. But to move on, so with the asylum, the myths that I always try to bust down is people being misinformed that if you cross the border and you have an illegal entry or an uninspected entry, you cannot adjust your status in the country, right? You cannot adjust your status in the country because you do not have a legal entry. Granted, but you can file a power if you're married to a U.S. citizen, and that would waive the illegal entry.
Correct.
But what I'm curious about, Tim, since 95% of the asylum cases and removal cases that I've done has been in Florida, what type of asylum case do you typically see? That where are the people coming from, and are there different strategies that you use in New York than what you would use in Florida?
It's a great question. I think the one advantage about New York is that we have a lot more judges than in Florida. There's 3 particular courts. You have 290 Broadway, 26 Federal Plaza, and 201 Barrack. 201 Barrack is known as the detained court. Yeah. And also, if you have a person cross the border with a child, they generally put them on a expedited docket, which is referred to as the family unit, right? So what happens is with cases like that, they want to adjudicate within 6 months to a year. They want to move forward. Whereas if you're in 26 Federal Plaza, 290 Broadway, it'll take about 2 to 3 years for your case generally. You have a much higher volume of cases here. Yeah. So that's why people tend to have some time. But the types of cases, they are variety. The beautiful thing about New York is so many different communities. Yeah. And as an immigration lawyer, you become worldly, right? Yeah. You know how to understand South Asian issues and what happens in India or Pakistan or Bangladesh. You're also aware of what's going on in the Caribbean when it comes to Haiti and Jamaica. I think I've done consultations with literally people here within a week, 2 weeks. I've entered the U.S. And generally, there's a lot of gang-based things that are going on in Jamaica. Sexuality is another thing that's huge.
Kitchen entry, but it's still huge.
So it's very varies depending on of course the country, but ultimately at the end of the day, if they're in New York, I think you have a fighting chance. There are courts throughout the United States. I would say Florida's a bit fair. Yeah, we have some good judges in Florida. I've become aware of that. Yeah. But in New York, I just think that judges are a little bit representative of the population of New York. And I think they're a little bit more considerate, understanding of the claims. And there's some judges, for lack of a better term, they don't really care, or they don't, they're not really open to listening.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you got to know that. And I think working in this court system here in New York, I've been able to understand what judges are will give our client a fair shot, and who will kind of just not give them that shot that they need.
Okay. And Alima, so like in New York, do you think there's a culture, like you growing up here, do you think there's a culture where people don't really care if you're undocumented or not?
Yes.
Because I feel like in Florida, depends on which county you are in, people, like if you're labeled undocumented, I mean, you're so xenophobia, but if you're labeled undocumented, it's like I'm either going to treat this person unfairly, or, why are you here taking our jobs and our money? But like, I mean, what's that culture like in New York based on what you've seen and where you grew up to?
I would say nobody really pays attention to that stuff.
Yeah.
Because this is a very fast-paced city.
Yeah.
In seconds, things is changing.
Yeah.
So nobody's really thinking of, this person is coming in and taking this. Everybody's just focused on what they got to do to keep moving on a day-to-day basis.
Okay.
Because it's like in a New York minute.
Yeah, in a year. That's a
New York
thing.
minute. So
Yeah.
I don't really think I don't think that's like a problem.
Oh, okay. And I mean, you said that your mom, no, she has her own hair store, right?
Yo, African hair braiding.
A big up your mom hair store, man.
Constant Camara African hair braiding.
Nice. And I mean, the thing I love about immigrants, man, just the whole entrepreneur mindset, being able to say, all right, I don't want to work for somebody, or I just want more, and to start my own business. I think that's just a huge piece of what immigration represents and what New York City represents, which is why it was so important to have an office here to just create more access. I mean, there are hundreds of immigration law firms, but there's none like ours. So, but on the note of like starting a business, Tim, can you provide any insight as to any business visas that you've done in New York?
Yeah, for sure. I've worked on an E2 investor visa.
Yeah.
I thought it was phenomenal. I really like the case. And what I love about it is basically, generally, you have to be here legally. Okay? That's the biggest thing. That's the first step. And generally, I've seen it work, and how I've worked on it is when someone was on a student visa, they were F1, they're about to wrap up their engineering major, and they wanted to start a business.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, I'm really open about starting a business. They had a family member who was big in real estate, and they could finance them. They could basically pay, because you always have to show, for an E2 investor visa, you have to show that the money that you're using this for it comes from a lawful source. So they were able to get money from their family member, was able to follow the lead on that, and then we worked on a business plan. And essentially, it was a solar engineering business, but you really more on a consulting level. So she really needed a small, nice office space, laptop, marketing materials, a business plan. And I remember we did premium processing. So usually when you do premium processing case, within 15 business days, they'll make a decision on the case. Usually, sometimes they'll issue RFE, so it comes out to about 45 days.
Yeah.
But once they made a decision, I remember working on an RFE for that case. I could fine tune. That was my first one, so I was like, every step. And when she got it, it was really nice to see, a really, really great case to work on. And it was just interesting to kind of see her hustle.
Yeah.
I think we were maybe the same age.
Wow.
And she was just talking to me about how she always had these dreams to be a business. So really interesting.
And then like that's different for you as an attorney, moving from like the asylum cases, the family-based petitions, to then doing a business type of visa. And like that's something that I've been preaching to immigrants, period, is that there are different ways to come into the US other than marriage or other than a student visa. Like the E2 visa, as Tim said, it's pretty much you can invest in a new or existing business, right? But it has to be relative to that industry.
Correct.
Right? And once you do that, the investment that you make has to be irrevocable. Meaning you can't just move it to an account to show USCIS that, okay, I have 75,000 in this account. No, you have to use it for the business, like such as for advertising, office space, staff, inventory, all of that type of stuff. But it's a good way to get into the US. It doesn't lead to a green card, but you get a 5-year visa that you can renew over and over. And you can bring your children under 21 and your spouse. But so there's the E2 visa, there's the ED5, there's the L1, and those are all great business visas. At the L1, you're able to move your company from outside of the country and start a subsidiary company in the US, and then you're able to transfer executive level employees. So if you have a business that's outside of the country, do a consultation to see if you're able to start a subsidiary company in the US and transfer executive level employees. And then after being on the L1, you'll be able to apply for a green card. But the last issue that I wanted to touch on, since we're on business and employment, is the whole thing with having a social security number versus having an ITIN, right? So what's your experience with undocumented people having a social security and an ITN, and what they believe they can do with both numbers?
Understood. So I've encountered a lot with the ITIN. Generally, if you start a business, you can start a business and not be documented. That's what I've understood, okay? And what it is that you can file for an ITIN number, and let's say you want to have a little small business in your neighborhood and you have an ITIN, you can file taxes with those documents. The government's going to want to make sure they're going to get the taxes, okay? So that's not going to be an issue. It's just that when it comes to actually getting a social, you generally have to be filing for some benefit with immigration to get a social. Sometimes people say, oh, how did I figure my social? Well, they had to either file for some type of case, some way, or there were people, and I've seen this before, who maybe arrived in the early 90s and they got socials because their parents would take them to the Social Security office, but the really on the social is not valid for work authorization. But maybe they take that off, or over time it becomes worn because the card is so old, and they still use that social. So people have to understand it's generally now, especially after 9/11, September 11, 2001, it became, from an immigration enforcement and making sure procedures and protocols were put in place, that became a big thing. So if you have someone that's getting a social, they usually have to have some file for some benefit. Whereas ITIN, they had to ultimately start a business, file it with the IRS, they get that number, and then they can start their business.
Okay. But I want you to bust down for the people the myth about the social and the ITN. Can you travel in and out of the country? Do you have any type of legal status? Can you work legally with a social security or ITN number in New York?
So for an ITIN, I see people have a business and work with ITIN. Although they're not documented, they're not legally working. That's their way of actually having life, making a living.
Yeah.
Whereas with a social, that's your legal way of working, right? It has to be a valid social, right? And not a social that you acquire through fraud. I mean, it has to be an actual social that you are legally entitled to, and you can then work legally as long as you're pursuing some type of benefit.
Yeah.
So
when you say benefit, you mean like if they have like a legal visa,
or they have an asylum case,
or they have an asylum case,
or they have a marriage case pending. And well, if your marriage case ends up not working out, your work authorization is not valid anymore either. So people have to understand those things can lapse. Yeah, they're not just permanent until you get your green card. You become, green card. That's going to be a little bit more, of course, a permanent way. If you didn't file for citizenship, you're always never going to have to worry about, work authorization standpoint. But ultimately, if you have a social, it needs to be tied to some type of benefit.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, Alima, before we go, tell us what you love about New York and why you think it's like the best city in the world.
I don't think it's the best city in the world. I don't feel like this is, I feel like when immigrants come here and they say better opportunity, dreams, that's New York for you. There's room for everyone to make money. It's free money everywhere. So I could say that's one thing I love about my city is the Big Apple. Everybody is a fair chance. Everybody's welcome in. We not mean here.
Yeah. And then one thing about New York woman, they're going to keep it 100.
All the time.
And then Tim, you moved from Florida to New York to practice law. What do you love about New York?
Man, big thing I love about New York is the food. I would say for me, I love the ability to.
Well, Florida has good food. You're Asian, right?
Yes, but it's just you get access. even in this area alone, Jamaican Queens, you have Guyanese, you have Trinidadian, you have Jamaican, Haitian, you have Bangladeshi, African. You have so many varieties of cultures, and I love that about New York and the food and learning and being able to bridge that gap with cultures. I think for me, that's the biggest thing. You can learn so much about how a person cooks the food, and a person can kind of introduce you to who they are through food. And I think I love that about New York, and that's what I enjoy. You just get on the train, and you'll be in a neighborhood and have all the choices that you're picking. So I really like that.
Yeah. And I mean, I love New York because I just grew up seeing it, you know, from like Home Alone. I think it was Home Alone 2 last in New York.
Yeah.
And just seeing the skyscrapers, and there's just something about seeing it as like the pinnacle of dreams, you know what I'm saying? That if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. If you never get in Jamaica, you can't make it anywhere. But New York, definitely bigger opportunities, fast paced, love it. So thank you for joining us. Stay tuned for more info.
Perfect.
That's it.